for attending this Q&A session on CDI and SFX single activation. We will be talking today about the questions and answering the questions that we received from customers. There is about 7 questions in this session that we received. It's going to be a short session, but that gives us time for questions at the end if you have any. So the first question that we received is on KB Manager and CDI, and the question was, how can I get a list of all the targets in KB Manager that I can activate for search in CDI? Now I have single activation. Now what we have is we've introduced a few new filters in the KB Manager, and one of them is called available for CDI discovery activation. So you can find the filter, is a little screenshot here at the bottom in the drop down of the filters. So if you select this filter and you select yes in the drop down, then you get all of the targets that are available for CDI discovery activation. So this is the quickest way to do that in the KB Manager. Additionally, we'll also be adding a new export option in the KB Tools section of SFX Admin in the basic export list, which will allow you to export all the targets available for CDI search activate, discovery or search activation. And there's additional filters there for all or all active targets, etc. So that will be available in June. Let's go to the second question. This is about the activation source. So this is more about discovery UI, your Primo UI. And the question is, what is the meaning of the source Alma SFX local collection that we see sometimes appearing in the full view of a record and also in the collection facet? So a user does a search, they look at the results, they go either to the full display or they look at the collection facet, and what they see there is instead of Springer or EBSCO or ProQuest, they see Alma SFX local collection. So when this appears, it means that there is activation in your SFX instance for a target that has no mapping to CDI. So the target exists in the SFX knowledge base, but there is no corresponding collection in CDI with a collection name. This typically happens if you create a local target with portfolios. It also in some cases happens for big consortia targets that do not have a mapping to CDI. In exceptional cases, it may also exist for others. We're still in the process of making sure that for all the targets in the SFX knowledge base where we can map them to collections in CDI, the mapping is in place, but this is very small minority. So for most of the CKB targets, they exist with a mapping, but in some cases there is no connection to CDI. What will happen is if it's such a target and it has portfolios, then the content may still be discoverable in CDI. Why? Because we ingest data from lots of different providers. So the data may be available from another data provider, and based on the activations that you have for your portfolios, the associated content in CDI will be set to full text available. So also for local portfolios, you'll get coverage and you'll be able to link to them via if they can be found in CDI. However, we are missing any name information because CDI doesn't know the name in that case. So the target cannot be mapped to a name in CDI, and therefore we use the label Alma SFX local collection in the source. So this is the reason why you see this or may see this appearing. Let's look at the third question, and this is about testing. So the scenario here is that the customer activated a collection in SFX. They wonder how they can check that the content that they activated is searchable in CDI. So if this customer wants to test, what you need to keep in mind is that it takes up to 72 hours between your activation in SFX KB Manager to the collection appearing in the Primo UI when you search CDI. This is currently it's 72 hours, and this goes from actually clicking on the activation button to the data being published in SFX via the exports, the CDI exports to then CDI fetching and handling this information. Now we are going to reduce this time. The goal is to get it to about 24 to 48 hours by the end of 2021. But if you make sure that you wait 72 hours, what you can do is you can check the records by searching Primo for CDI. Now, if it's a collection, for example, it's a journal or a book, the best thing to do is to just, for example, for a journal, to search for articles in this journal or search by ISSN, and then check if you can find it in and find it in the result list. If the target is a database, so it doesn't have portfolios, then you can use DBID searching, and this is explained in the next slide. So, what is a DBID? A DBID is the identifier in CDI. So it's really the connection, the mapping between the CDI collection and the SFX target. You can find the DBID if you go either to the Edit Target window in KB Manager or the View Target window. And you see there a field, it's marked here in yellow, that says DBID, and then you see either a 3-letter code or a 4-letter code. In some cases, there may be multiple comma-separated DBIDs there. That's in case it's a one-to-many mapping between SFX and CDI. So then you just pick one of the values, you copy it, and then Control-C, and then what you do is you create a search in your Primo discovery system. Any search will do. The search string is not important because you are going to replace it. So what happens is you look at the URL that is created when you search Primo, and it always contains query equals and then any contains and then the search string that you filled in. Now, what you want to do is you want to take this DBID, fill it in instead of the search string. In this case, I replace my tests with the DBID BLK, and you also replace any with DBID. If you do that and then you press on Enter, you will execute a search in Primo CDI for this particular DBID, and you'll get results that are affiliated with this particular collection. So this is a way to check that your activations are showing up correctly in the Primo interface. Let's look at question number 4, and this is about discovery and full text activation. So the customer asked, can I activate a target both for discovery and full text, and what is the impact? So as I mentioned in last week, anything that you activate for full text immediately becomes searchable in CDI, and it will have the indication full text available or full text online in this green text in the Primo results in the CDI result list. Now, so this is the impact of full text, and the discovery activation is for the expand search, where you get more than just the things that you've activated for full text. So let's see what happens if you activate both. First of all, for targets with portfolios in SFX, and also for search targets that are labeled as having full text in them, if you activate full text and you also activate, first of all, if you activate the full text, then all the active portfolios will be published to CDI. They'll be discoverable with this green indication full text available. They'll be included in the filtered search where we filter by full text availability. They'll also be included in the expand search. Now, if you activate the same targets also for discovery, then in case there was partial activation in the collection, for example, you activated half of the portfolios that existed in SFX for full text, then the other half, the inactive portfolios will also be discoverable in CDI, but they'll only show up in the expand search. And these, the collections affiliated with these portfolios will be flagged as no full text available. It's kind of a gray indication, and it's also not hyperlinked. You can't use it as a link to the full text. So if you have a target and you activated all the portfolios for full text, and you also use the discovery activation, then really there's going to be no impact because everything is already showing up as full text available. There's nothing to add to that in the expand search. So in that case, there is no difference. And the search activation is not, the discovery activation is not really necessary. That's the same for a search target, so a target without portfolios and that has full text in it. If you activate this in SFX on target level for full text, and you activate it additionally also for discovery, there's no real difference. All the content will be flagged as full text available. We'll get this green indication and will be included in the filtered search. It will also, of course, appear in the expand search, but it will look exactly the same. It will be flagged as full text available. So again, here, the search or discovery activation is not really necessary. As soon as you do the full text activation, everything becomes available in full text. Okay, so this is the first part of the question. There's a second thing I want to mention here in this question, and that applies to search targets, so targets without portfolios that are ANI databases that are not what we call free for search. They require a subscription in order for you to be allowed to search them. Examples of this type of targets are Scopus and Web of Science databases. So here you have to actually pay to have them discoverable in CDI. What happens here is that search activation right now is not possible. You have to activate them. You have to fully activate them in SFX, just like you would activate a full text target. You cannot just activate them for discovery. And this is because we wanted to make sure that you indicate that you really subscribe to this collection. Now, we found that customers found this confusing, that they cannot use search activation because they're ANI databases, so activating them for full text isn't very intuitive. So we're going to change this so that from the June release onwards, you will be able to use both full activation, full text activation, and discovery activation. Both will have exactly the same impact. The content will be discoverable in CDI. But so currently, if you go to KB Manager, you will see that for Scopus or Web of Science, you cannot activate them for discovery. You can only activate them for full text. That's going to change from June onwards. And regardless of whether you activate them using the full activation, the full text activation, or the discovery activation, the impact will be the same. Those collection that are ANI databases that you have to subscribe to in order for them to be searchable will be showing up in CDI. So this was question 4. Let's continue to question 5. What we have here is a question about alternative coverage. So the customer asked, how can you see which material is covered by alternative coverage as opposed to directly from a publisher? First of all, alternative coverage, what does it mean? Alternative coverage means that we don't get the data, the records directly from the provider. They don't provide us with this information. Instead, you activate other collections or other records, and CDI will make sure that the activations become available. So how can you see whether there is this particular target is available via alternative coverage versus data directly from the provider? Well, there is a field, first of all, in the KB Manager Edit Target window, also available in the View Target window. In the CDI section at the bottom of the page, there's a field which is called Provider Coverage. If it's set to no, it means it's alternative coverage. If it's set to yes, it means we get data records directly and ingest them into the CDI index directly from the provider. So this is a screenshot in orange. You can see the field here. In this case, it's alternative coverage because it was not indexed from the data that we received from the provider directly. You can also get this information if you look at the SFX CDI collection list. If you want to get a full list outside of SFX admin, and the link is here, so you can find it. It's available in our Knowledge Center. So here you have an Excel file with all the collections that are available in CDI, and then you have a column that says provider coverage and then yes or no. So this is another way to find this information. Just one thing to mention here is that in Primo Central, you had to actually go in and activate collections specifically for alternative coverage. This is no longer needed in single activation because in SFX, all the full text activations are published to CDI and they're used for alternative coverage immediately. It means that everything that you have portfolios for in SFX, all the content connected to these portfolios will be automatically searchable and will be indicated as full text online. So this is a different approach between Primo Central and single activation in CDI. Okay, so let's look at the next question that we received, which is about the linking method. This is actually a question that we received also from some of the ALMA CDI customers, so we thought it would be useful to put it here. The question is about linking in CDI and why do some collections use the link resolver and why do some use the link in record method. So there's two methods for linking in CDI. One is via SFX link resolver. The other is using the link that is available in the provider record. When do we choose a collection to link via the link resolver versus the link in the record? So the answer here is that there's pros and cons for each of the two linking methods. Now, we typically use link resolver type of linking and this is terminology from ALMA, selective and aggregator collections. These are collections with portfolios where we have a good linking syntax from the provider and we have good identifiers in the CDI discovery and the KB. By identifiers, it means typically scholarly content that has ISSNs or ISBN information, or a good syntax that allows us to do linking to the target. The advantage of using the link resolver is that there is a lot of configurability here. You have the SFX link resolver, so you can determine the appearance of the targets. You can decide what is the order, you can use display logic rules and all kinds of configuration. Essentially, you have control over the links that are offered in CDI. It's also the link resolver type of linking is chosen also if there's multiple providers that provides this linking to this particular package, and you may subscribe to one or multiple providers depending on your subscriptions. Now, the disadvantage of using link resolver is sometimes the linking does not work as well if there's only metadata that can be used for linking. And this is especially the case if there is metadata that may be slightly different between one provider and another. For example, things like article title or book title information. In some cases, there is a mismatch, and that's essentially an issue that can cause problems with linking, especially linking that only uses metadata, that doesn't use identifiers. So this is the first method, the link resolver method, and these are the pros and cons of this of linking via the link resolver. Now let's look at linking records. So that's the second type of linking method. Linking record is typically used where the record is available uniquely from one single platform, and the linking is difficult or impossible to create using the link resolver because there's no nice link syntax, or because there's no use of identifiers, or the identifiers that may be used may be different between different collections. So we typically use linking records for things like images or video or audio content, not so typical scholarly material that has identifiers like ISSNs and ISBNs. The linking record, the disadvantage of the linking record is that we can only provide one link here, not multiple links. This is why we use it typically when the data is only available from a single platform. The other disadvantage here is that there's no configurability. There is a priority list for which linking record to choose, where we prefer open access and we prefer primary publishers, but this is something that we do internally in CDI, so there's no configuration that the librarian can do in this case, which is different from the link resolver. Now, in exceptional cases, we also are starting to create what we call hybrid collections. So these are collections that use, for part of the content, use the link in record, and for part of the content, they use the link resolver. So these are collections where some of the material have good identifiers and metadata, and other part of the material does not. And hybrid means that for the part of the collection that does not have good identifiers, we will use the link in record method, and for the part that has good metadata, we'll be using the link resolver linking. Okay, so this was question number 6 on what kind of linking methods we use in CDI. I have one last question, which is about link preference. The question is there a way to show both the link in record and the link resolver links in the CDI records? I know that there is a priority setting and it seems to work well, but we would prefer to have all links available to our users. And the answer here is that at this time, the system Primo only shows one option, either link resolver linking or link in records. And this is done according to the priority setting that the customer referred to, that we document in the CDI article that you see here below. But we are planning to add more links, all links, later in the year. This is currently scheduled for December. So then you would be able to get both the link in the records from the provider as well as OpenURL linking. Okay, and this is the 7th question. So this concludes my list of questions that we received and we wanted to share with you. I also have some more information about documentation and support. First of all, there's a few links here to documents that are quite useful in this regard, and that also have information that I talked about in this presentation. There is the information about how to activate targets for CDI and SFX, and also about the linking. And there's also a link to the collection lists for SFX, all the collections that are indexed in CDI for SFX customers. If you have any questions that are specific to your environment, or you have any problems, we encourage you to open a support case so our analysts can look at it. We also have a general email available for general questions. That's cdi_info@exlibrisgroup.com.